Over the past 2 years, my AI agency, Morningside AI, has built AI systems for companies of all sizes, from local martial arts gyms to publicly traded companies, and even an NBA team. And at the core of every one of our client projects are a handful of powerful AI prompts, which in a few hundred carefully chosen words can automate hundreds or even thousands of hours of manual work. So being able to write really good prompts like these is a superpower these days, regardless of what career you're in. But the tricky thing is that writing these kinds of really good prompts usually takes a lot of time and effort. And realizing this, at Morningside AI, it became a major priority for us to figure out how to write these kind of elite production grade prompts for our client projects as quickly as possible. And so over the past 2 years, using the latest in AI prompting research and professional grade prompting software, we created our own rapid prompt engineering system called the PDER Process. And in this video, I'm going to be revealing our entire system, including the exact prompt engineering tools and software we use, and the process as well, that we use at Morningside AI to craft hyper-effective prompts in just minutes that are able to extract the most value from AI models possible without having to spend all day writing and testing those prompts. So we're going to start quickly with an overview of the PDER framework and then diving into a more hands-on walkthrough of exactly what it looks like when it's in action. And we're basically going to be building a business-grade prompt from scratch using this process. So whether you're an employee who's just keen on automating some of the work you do, or you're an AI agency owner wanting to deliver better client results and more consistently, or if you're a business owner and you're looking to train up your own team on how to write prompts well and write them fast and be able to automate their own work, then this video will show you how the professionals do it. So first and foremost, let's just talk about what makes prompt engineering so powerful, right? It's kind of overused and over talked about, but when done right, it is essentially like having a magic wand that can transform data from one form into another. You're taking some kind of raw information and then turning it into something valuable just by writing some magic words in the middle. It's pretty magical when you think about it. But here's the reality that most people face, right? There's a massive difference between casual prompting that most people do and professional prompt engineering, which is what I'm going to teach you how to do in this video. So when you are just chatting to ChatGPT, you can go back and forth and you can kind of refine your requests by asking follow-up prompts and sending more questions to nudge you in the right directions until you get what you want. So it may take a few tries, but eventually you will get to the outcome you want. But in the real world, whether you're building systems for businesses like myself and the team at Morningside AI, or you're creating some client deliverables, or you're automating entire workflows, you need to be able to prompt at a level of what's called single shot prompting. Basically, your prompt needs to be able to work perfectly the first time, every time, without any human intervention and kind of going back and forth and saying, hey, look, could you do it without these words or in this kind of tone, right? You don't have that back and forth. It needs to be able to be given data, transform that how you want it, and do that reliably at scale. And this is where all of the value really is for prompt engineering as a skill. But this is also where most people get stuck in this frustrating trade-off that I mentioned earlier. On one hand, you can either write prompts quickly that perform okay, or you can spend hours crafting the ones that work flawlessly. And when you're trying to build something valuable, whether that's for your employer or for your clients or for your own business, neither option is acceptable. Let me give you some quick examples of why this matters. So say you're an employee, right? Imagine you are automating a weekly report that normally takes you 3 hours. So a mediocre prompt that you do quickly might get you maybe 70% of the way there. There's still an hour or so of cleanup work that you have to do, whereas a great prompt that you spend a lot of time on might do 95% of the work for you and pretty much save you that entire 3 hours. And for AI automation agency owners, when you are delivering to your clients, the difference between a good and a great prompt can mean the difference between a one-time project and a long-term retainer and relationship worth thousands and thousands of dollars per month. Or if you're a business owner, training your team to write elite prompts means that you can implement AI across your entire organization with consistent and reliable results. So it was in realizing the difference between these good and great prompts and how much extra legwork you can get the AI system to do with the great prompts, but also factoring in that these take a lot longer to write, that we decided to create our own process at Morningside AI to always get the best prompts that get the most out of AI models without having to spend all day writing and testing them. So the PDER process is a systematic approach that allows us to create these high-performing prompts in a fraction of the time that it would normally take us. It's so simple that anyone can be trained on it so that they can use it in their own role for automating work. So it's very helpful not just for our AI engineers and developers when they're doing client work. It's helpful to teach our entire team so that they know how to create their own AI tools within their work and automate different parts of their own work that they would rather not be doing. So it's a win-win across the whole organization when people are using this kind of process. So PDER or PDER stands for, firstly, P is plan, which is clearly defining what you need the prompt to do before even writing a single word. So this is something that many people trip up on and don't even do. D is for draft, and this is rapidly generating an initial prompt using an AI tool that we've created that basically rapidly applies the latest research-backed techniques when it comes to prompting. Then E is evaluate, and this is using a professional prompt engineering software, which I'll show you in a second, in order to strategically test the prompt against multiple expected inputs. So it's rapid testing in a special prompt engineering environment. And finally, R is for refine, which is looking at the responses that you get from the tests we do within the software, and then making targeted improvements, and then repeating that cycle over and over again. And what makes this process so powerful is that it combines three critical elements that most people miss in their prompt engineering, which is firstly using research-backed prompting techniques that are already baked into this process. It's using custom AI tools that generate solid first drafts of the prompt for you, saving you tons of time. And thirdly, using a professional prompt engineering IDE that most people have never heard of. And the best part is that I'm going to be sharing all of these tools with you for free that we use at Morningside. So you're going to get access to our prompt planning worksheet, our AI prompt generator tool, and also a link to the professional prompt IDE that we use as well. And so for the rest of this video, to show you how this looks in action, I'm going to be walking you through each step of the PDER process while actually building a production grade prompt from scratch. So you're going to get to see exactly how we do it at Morningside with nothing held back. So let's start with the first component, which is planning. The planning phase is where most people go wrong before they even started, really. They just jump straight into writing a prompt without clearly defining what they needed to do. So at Morningside, we start every prompt with a planning worksheet that answers some very key questions that you need to know before going into things. Questions like, what are the inputs and what data is this prompt actually going to be processing? What format does the output need to be in? Where can I find some high quality examples of input and output pairs? Which model should be used based on the budget and performance needs of this prompt and of this use case? What are the specific requirements or constraints that have come to me from the client or from the project as a whole? So this planning phase typically takes 5 to 10 minutes, but it can save hours and hours of frustration later. So here on screen, we have the prompt planning sheet, which you guys are going to be able to get a copy of. This is a resource directly out of our accelerator, as with some of the other stuff I'm going to be sharing. Now, before we can actually get into planning, we need to know what kind of prompt we're going to be writing. So in this video, I've come up with a hypothetical scenario. Say you are an AI automation agency delivering a project for a client, or maybe you're a business and you're doing this internally. But we're going to be creating a prompt that is an email autoresponder that can basically classify inbound emails to this fantasy e-commerce tool that I've come up with, which is called Tech Gear Pro, and they sell tech products online. And this prompt that we're about to write is going to be attached to their email inbox. So every new email is going to be run through the prompt we write. And the prompt is basically expected to be able to classify, firstly, so what kind of query is this? Is it asking about order status? Are they asking for a return or a refund? Are they having technical issues and they need technical support? Or does it fall outside of these? So we have 4 broad categories, and that's the classification step. And then within each of these, we have a bit more detail and a bit more complexity, because I thought that was a bit too simple. I want to give you guys a bit more of an advanced example so that you really see how you can apply this to difficult problems within businesses or even within your own, maybe you're an employee and you do this stuff. So if the email comes in and it classifies it as an order status inquiry, if it's been 0 to 7 days, the process is basically to reassure them that, hey, look, we usually take 7 to 10 days. Please just wait a few days. You can track your order here at this, rah, rah, rah. But if it's over 8 days, then this thing is going to go back and say, hey, look, I'm going to be looking into this for you. This should be here by now. And that's basically buying the human team time. So in the real world, this is an autoresponder that deals with as much of the stuff up front as it can. Like, hey, your order should be on the way. No worries, just check this page. But if it's gone over that, then it can flag the human team and say, hey, look, give an instant response to the customer so that they're not sitting there getting all antsy because they're not getting a response, and basically buys the human team time to look into it and then come in with another response. And the same thing happens with return and refund requests here. Obviously, for most e-commerce stores, they've got maybe a 30-day returns policy. So part of the input data that we're going to be getting with these emails, which we'll see in a second, this will make a lot more sense in a second. But part of the data that we're going to be getting is also how many days since they placed their order. So if it's been less than 30 days since they purchased, then the AI autoresponder can automatically give them the process for doing that return and getting the refund. If it's been more, then they sort of buy a bit of time for the team and say, hey, look, let me check if there's anything else I can do. And then the human team can step in. Same thing for technical support. Fairly straightforward. It's trying to handle most of the situations up front, but if it is a bit more complex, then it's buying time for the human. So that's really the value of the system. It gets back to customers as quickly as possible, answers as many of those easy to answer questions, or just like routing them to the right resources, as you can see with these links. But in the case where the human does need a step in, it's buying time and giving them a response while the humans come and solve it when they come onto their next shift. And so this whole thing here is basically a brief or a write-up of what this project would be about. And it's got all the context we need in order to be able to build a system to execute on this. So now that we know what we're trying to do here, we can go back to our planning sheet and fill this out quickly. So what are the inputs, if any? Inputs are going to be the customer email and the number of days since purchase. So that's what we're expecting to be passed into this prompt and the sort of system as a whole once it's baked into some kind of workflow automation. Where is the IP coming from, if any? In many cases, the prompt is needing to apply some kind of thinking or some kind of process. And in this case, the IP is coming from this document here, which is all of this information. So all of this is basically the IP. In other cases where you're writing these prompts, it may be for you're writing scripting, or you're doing short form content scripting, or any kind of other content repurposing. In this IP section, you could have some Alex Hormozi, you could have some previous examples of high performing scripts that you put out on your social media, etc. But it's basically like, what's the juice, what's the meat, what's actually telling it how to transform this data? What are the instructions on how it should be doing its task? So in this case, where's the IP coming from is project brief. What format does the output need to be in? Just a plain text email response. So the output of this prompt is just going to be the email that the AI has written to respond to. So that's not too complicated. In a bunch of use cases for this kind of prompt engineering, you'd want it to output in JSON so that you can do something with it via another step in a workflow automation, or you want to extract some information and put it into a database. So the output format is important. And how we're going to get 2 to 3 high quality examples, as you're going to see in the perfect prompt generator tool, we do need input output examples in order to get the best possible prompt from our first draft generation. In this case, I've also included it on this write-up. So I'll give you guys access to all these resources. It'll be in my free Skool community. You can just go onto Skool, join for free. It'll take a few minutes to get accepted. And then in the YouTube resources tab, there'll be this video, and we'll have all of the resources here, including the perfect prompt generator tool, access to the software that I'm going to be showing you in a second, and also this document here and the prompt planning sheet, etc. So that's all on the Skool community. And so here I've generated some example responses. So as you can see, we are expecting inputs of customer email and number of days since purchase. So the inputs, we have this QA format, QA, question, answer. This will make a bit more sense when we do the drafting step next. But basically we have the input of the email, and we have the number of days since purchase. And this is the expected output. So we have one pair here, and then an example input and output, and then we have another pair here, slightly different, and the example output, and the input here, and another output example as well. So these kinds of input and output pairs are really essential to make sure that the output is coming in the right format, right tone of voice. And you guys will see in a second how when we bake this into the prompt, we can even turn it on and off and see how much of a difference this makes. So we have our examples here. So we can go back to our prompting sheet. We can say client has provided, they are included in the brief. And can this be done in one step? Now in this case, I'd say yes, but sometimes you may need to chain multiple prompts together. For example, you may want to throw a whole bunch of information in and get it to write an outline, and then it needs to go over that outline and kind of approve that it meets some kind of criteria or way that you like to structure your videos. And then you need to do another step after that that's going to actually flesh it out into, say, a script or into some piece of content that you want to write. So sometimes it's called prompt chaining, and you want to do multiple steps where you're asking a bit too much for it to do it all in one step. But in this case, we can do the classification of what type it is and also the generation of the response all in one go. You could split that out into, okay, let's do a classifier first. That's more specialized in the writing of the responses rather than of the classification. But in this case, I think it's overkill. Can this be done in one step? Yes. And which model should be used? This really comes down to a number of factors, like how much is this going to be used? If this is going to be hitting the API maybe thousands of times a month. When it comes to the model, we need to be thinking about what is this task for? What context is it in? How many times is it going to be used? How difficult is the task? So for more difficult tasks, you're obviously going to want to go for the more expensive and smarter models, which typically do cost more. But at the same time, if this thing is going to be running thousands and thousands of times a month, you may have a bit of a trade-off where, hey, we need a really intelligent model and we need it a lot. So what's the best trade-off here? How can I get it to work with the cheapest model possible? Or if it's only going to be used maybe a handful or a few dozen times a month, then you may as well just go for a very smart model and just get the best results from it. So in the cases where there's super high volume, you're going to want to try and get the cheapest model possible, but that can make it a little bit more difficult and require a bit more prompt engineering. But that's really where the value of being a good prompt engineer and having a good process comes from, which is you can get better performance out of cheaper models where other people have to rely on really, really expensive ones. You can use much cheaper ones with better instructions and get the same or even a better result. So in this case, because it is a kind of writing task, I'm going to go with Claude Sonnet 3.7, which has come out recently, which is the best, smartest writing model. But that is really just the starting point. We can benchmark it with that, and then we can try to go down to cheaper and cheaper models, even within the Claude family. But we want to benchmark it and see just how good we can get it. And then if we can use our prompt engineering to work that model down to something cheaper and cheaper. And does the client have specific requests? None, aside from in the brief. Okay, so step 2 of the planning sheet is actually requirement gathering. So this is prepping everything that we're going to be putting into our AI tool in a second. And a lot of this I'm just going to be able to grab directly from our sheet. But this is really where you collect a lot of the information that's going to allow you to rapidly draft it in the next step. So the purpose of this prompt, I can go back to here maybe grab all of this and just take it back over. Inputs, again, this is similar to what we had just up here. We can just grab these. And a bit of context. So this is the email, and then days of purchase, number of days since the customer be used for. This is to be used for determining actions such as refund request. And now that we're at this IP section, it's asking for the secret source or methodology, which we have in the brief here. So if we go response categories and guidelines, copy all of this. And we actually had this information here. Maybe I'll just grab that and put it in as well. So this is the IP of secret source. And for the output, we can just do similar to what we had before. So this step one of exploration is just to get your thoughts out on the page and make sure that you know what you're doing when you head into the second phase here. So if we go down and plain text email response, and then for the examples, we can go back down and grab our examples from the client brief. Boom, we've got that there. And at the bottom of the sheet, there's actually another finished example so that if you are doing another prompt, you can look at this and get an idea of how you can fill that out for a different kind of prompt. And as I said, this is from my accelerator, so there's some other stuff here. And the next step is to use our plan in generating our draft, which we're going to be covering in a second using our perfect prompt generator tool. Since we've filled out this entire requirement gathering section, we have completed our planning, and now we're ready to move on to the drafting using our AI tool, the perfect prompt generator. So to do the drafting step, we need to sign up to Relevance AI. There'll be a link here in the resource, so this will be on the Skool community. And you can sign up to Relevance AI. And once you have, you can click this link, which is going to allow you to clone a copy of our perfect prompt generator into your account. And up in the top right-hand corner, you will see the clone button. So you want to click this and clone it into your account. That means you are going to be responsible for paying the billing for it. They've got a really good free plan, so you don't need to worry about that. And before we jump into using this and using the plan that we've just written to generate this prompt in a few seconds, I just want to go behind the scenes a little bit, and you guys will be able to check this out as well once it's in your account. But you can see how I've put this tool together. So this is what I want you guys to be able to do with the prompts that you create. So whether you're an employee, whether you're an agency owner, whether you're a business owner, using Relevance AI to create your own tools like this. This is an AI tool. It's weird because we're using an AI prompt to create an AI tool that creates AI prompts. Can be a little bit tricky to wrap your head around, but this is our perfect prompt generator tool, and it's going to take in the use case information, which is a lot of what we just wrote in the planning, and it's also going to take in some input and output examples. When we click run on this, it's going to send it to an LLM step here, where I have baked in all of the latest research, such as role prompting, such as chain of thought prompting, you have emotion prompting, use of markdown formatting, etc., few shot prompting, etc. All of the information is already baked into this. So what happens when you click on run this tool? What it does is it passes in all of the information we did in the plan, passes it into this, and in a few seconds, it applies all of those best practices for prompting to the inputs and to the use case that you've explained in the inputs. So I might actually just change this to Claude 3.7. And so now you're ready to see just how quickly this prompt can be writing the draft. So instead of having to do this all manually, you get to do it in a few seconds. So if we come back to our planning sheet, you go back up, what you want to do is take all of this first section from the purpose down to the examples. So we just grab the output, go back to Relevance AI and the perfect prompt generator tool. If we paste this in, and that's all of this use case information, what is the prompt doing and why, give as much information as possible. And then we can go down to our input and output examples, and we can grab it here, go down. And if we paste this in here now and click run, if we give it a few seconds, it's going to write the full draft for this prompt, and it's analyzing the use case, all the information we provided on it, all the rules that we gave it, and that IP that we talked about. And then it's applying all of the best prompting practices that are research backed that we've included in the perfect prompt generator tool just here. And now if we scroll down, you can see that we've got the full prompt written out. So let's just take a skim through it, right? We have a role. You are an expert customer support autoresponder for TechGear Pro. Skilled in analyzing customer inquiries, identifying issue types, and crafting personalized, helpful responses that either resolve issues completely or set appropriate expectations for human follow-up. Responses are friendly, concise, Task. And the task it seems to have nailed, which is analyze the incoming customer email and provide an appropriate response using the step-by-step process. So this is chain of thought prompting, which is applied. Carefully read the customer's email, identify the order type, consider the days since the purchase, determine if the issue can be completely resolved, etc. So it's taken all of that IP and that juice and instructions that we've provided, and it's applied it through a chain of thought method in this case. And then here we have things like emotion prompting, which is saying we greatly value your ability to strike the perfect balance. Your expertise is really, really appreciated. And this is proven through research to improve the performance of the prompts versus when you don't have these emotional words in it as well. So it's all woven in there, all of the best and latest research in prompt engineering. And here we have the inputs that it's going to be expecting. And then also as context, it's given all of the rules that the AI needs to be following when responding. And it's got our examples in here too. The layout seems to be a little bit off, but it's also got the notes section down the end. And what we want to do from here, we have technically done the drafting. As you can see, that's really where we put a lot of effort into the plan, because once you throw it into here and we click this formatted, then we have it all ready to go, nicely formatted in markdown formatting, which is another thing that helps with prompt performance. And we have it all nicely structured and ready to go into the next step. So that is drafting. And now we can jump into actually evaluating using our prompt engineering software called Prometheus. Okay, so here we are. This is the software that we use at Morningside for prompt engineering. And this has been a sort of secret weapon of mine and the team for a long time. I have shared it with my accelerator members, but now I think it's time to properly share with you all on the channel here. It's what's called a prompt engineering IDE, which is an integrated development environment. And this is what coders or developers use when they are writing software. So you may be familiar with VS Code. I'll put some stuff up on screen. It may ring a few bells if you've ever watched any kind of tutorials. But applications like VS Code are basically a all-in-one development software that allows developers to easily write code, manage files, run code via the terminal. It's all the tools you need really in one place. It's an integrated development environment. And this is a prompt engineering integrated development environment with all of the best tools that you need to be able to write and test and improve prompts like an engineer, and taking more of a scientific approach rather than sort of an artsy approach, which is what many people do, to some success, of course. No, this is not a sponsored video. I'm not getting paid by anyone to promote this or relevance. This is just showing you exactly what we do at Morningside. So the link to sign up to Prometheus will be with all the other links and resources on the Skool, so you can get it there and sign up. And once you're inside, you will see something that looks a bit like this. And so on the left side here, we have our prompts and data sets. I'm just going to click add a new prompt here, and we can start to build out our prompt within Prometheus so that we can start to test it and evaluate. We are in the evaluate part of the PDER process now, which means we need to load up our prompt into Prometheus. We need to run some inputs against it and evaluate where we are, like how far are we off where we're actually trying to get to? Is the tone where we need it to be? Is the prompt actually getting the classification correct? So testing all of these things is what the evaluation step is with this initial draft. So to get things set up in Prometheus, it's actually really, really easy. If you just go back to Relevance AI and you copy these sections, if I copy the role here, and I go back, and then I'm going to add this block as a role, and you'll see why we start to separate them into these different chunks, as it makes it a lot easier for us to test things. So we have our role in here. I'm going to add another block here. It's the task this time. I am going to leave that off. I'm just going to skip over the data here for now, because we need to do something that's a little bit different for this, which is going to take in the various different inputs we want to test, so we can get specifics now. Now grabbing the context. So what you can see me doing here is putting the markdown formatting in. So this just helps the AI to understand the structure of the prompt better. So it's reading this as a heading, and this is an H2 or a heading 2. So it gives it a lot more structure. So this is the specific section, this is the task, this is the role, etc. And here we have a sort of heading 2 under the context, which is all about the response categories and guidelines as well. So now I can do the same with the examples. And now we could just grab the notes here. We have all the different components of the prompt split up into the different sections, so that's going to make it very easy for us to test in a second. But the last step before we actually start evaluating is we need to go and insert the variable or the data set. Like I said earlier, we want to be able to test this against multiple different inputs and determine if it's working as expected. So Prometheus allows us to do this very easily by going into what's called data sets. And if I go back to the information that was provided by the client or the brief for the project, I have all of the input data here. So we have these pairs. We can go, this is the email, and then the day since purchase is in there as well. So if you look at this, aside from the from and the subject, which you could probably kill and take out, we have the same format in the examples here. So the email and then the day since purchase. So that's the input format that is expecting. And also just to make it a bit easier, we can say rename this here with this little rename button on the side. And say this is our Tech Gear Pro email. We could also rename our data set here, Tech Gear Pro. And so this is one item in the data set. This will all make sense in a second, so stick with me. If we then go add another item, we go back to this. Add another item. So I've got 10 of these to add in. These are going to be on the resource. You can copy them in if you're following along. But the idea is the same, that you want to have a bunch of different cases that we can test against. And I'm just going to sort of go off camera and just add these in now. All right, so now I have 10 items in my data set, and these are dummy emails or dummy data sets that are going to be passed to the prompt, or hypothetical ones that it should be able to deal with, and sort of trying to simulate as much as possible what it would look like in the real world. So now we can go back to our Tech Gear Pro email autoresponder prompt, and we need to insert into here a data block. So we can click on Tech Gear Pro here. And as you can see, we can now cycle through all of these different cases to test, which is super great. And here, what we want to do is add on the end. If we go back to Relevance AI, you can see that we did have a little bit here. And this is basically where it was saying we should input the variables. What I like to do is add a little bit more. We can go like input data. And so this stuff here is obviously going to slot right underneath whatever we have here. So we can say classify and write. And then we have it. Now, when we run this, it's going to fit just under here. And this is going to be the input data section. So I'll click back to one here and we're almost ready. All we need to do now is to select the model. So as I said, I wanted to run a Claude 3.7, which is the latest one they have. Gives us the prices here, which is super helpful when you are planning these out. It has all of the options here for temperature. I might just put this down to 0.1 for temperature, and this is something we're going to be testing in the next step. And you have things like the token limit. I would probably chop that down to 400. There's things like JSON mode. So remember when we talked about how you can have different kinds of outputs, JSON mode allows you to play around with that and sort of strict enforce a JSON formatted output. And before we actually run this, you will need to set up your API keys. So you can come to your account down here by clicking on the bottom left and manage API keys. You can see I've got my Anthropic one in there. You can go to console.anthropic.com and you can set up your account and get your API key and pop it in here. You can do it for all these different providers, DeepSeek, Gemini, Grok, Mistral, OpenAI. I've got mine in there too, XAI and everything. So in order to use the models, you obviously need to access it through their API, but this is how you can manage your API keys within Prometheus. So now we are ready to give this a spin. We have all the data in. We're going to be testing this first case, which is I ordered the premium wireless earbuds on Monday and was wondering when they will arrive. I paid for standard shipping and I'm just curious about the timeline. So this is someone who purchased recently and is wondering where their product is. It should be able to correctly classify this as an email about an order status and then realize that since it's just 4 days since purchase, that they should just be sort of prompted to wait a little bit longer. So if we give this a spin, and all right, there we go. We have our first response and it's saying, after analyzing the customer email, I can see this. So first thing we've noticed already, as we tested the first one, is that it's doing this typical AI thing with the sort of conversational chat models we have these days. It's writing a bit of a lead into it. So right there, that's something that I'd want to tweak, and that's going to be in the next step of refining. At this point, you'd want to be making some notes of the different issues that you want to solve and say, hey, look, I want to add down in the notes section. What I want to do is add in a reminder that they should only be replying with the email. There should be no other context provided. Just the email is the output. But it also does depend on the system. If this was not fully automated and the AI wasn't actually going to send this email automatically, then having this a bit of a summary and sort of chain of thought of it explaining why it's doing or why it wrote what it wrote can actually be quite helpful because it increases the accuracy of it. But in this case, we're assuming that this is going to be for an automated response system. And so you wouldn't want it to attack any of that on. So it's very important that we prompt that out. But for now, we can see that it's getting the classification and the response right based off our instructions. What you can do in Prometheus is grade them very easily. Because there's this stuff at the top, I've given it a thumbs down, and this is going to allow me to see over time which ones are good responses and which aren't. This one is a missing order, but it's taken longer than 10 days. So we should be able to see it saying, hey, look, let me go and get a human on this. There we go. It's saying, this delay is unusual. I'm personally looking into what happens, I'll keep you updated over the next 24. So it's basically buying time for the human team. And again, this is probably a thumbs down because it's got the stuff at the start. And I think already we can start to see where we want to be tweaking the prompt and the direction that we want to be making changes. So we can jump into the next step, which is going to be the refine stage. So in this refining process, this is an iterative thing that you do sort of over and over. It goes evaluate and refine and evaluate where you're making changes to the prompt, evaluating them again. And it's a cycle that you go through until you're happy with the results. So in this case, as I said, we're getting this filler or this preamble at the start of all of them, which we want to immediately try to buff out, which we can go likely to, say, the task section here. Actually, let's go to the specific section. I'm going to create a new version. So this is one of the tools that we have within Prometheus, is that we can add a variant. So I'm going to create a variant of the specifics. I'm actually going to go back and copy what we had. And I'm going to put it in here and say, add one more to the bottom of this and say, your response. So I've said your response should not include anything other than the email to be sent to the customer. Do not include any other preamble or reasoning. This is because you are part of an automated response system. So you must not have this extra content at the start of your responses. And then I'll probably try to reinforce this again. I might just copy it for now. I will make a duplicate of the context, because I think in the context here, we can make it a lot clearer that this is an automated system rather than one that it's allowed to do this kind of stuff at the start. So there, I've just added in a little bit extra, giving it even an example of the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So I've taken a little excerpt out of this and say, adding reasoning or any other waffle like XYZ could be disastrous because it would reveal that the system is automated. So I have a new version of my context here. I could tack it on to the end of the notes, but we have our new version of the specifics with this one added at the end and a new version of the context. So now we can give this a run. I'll probably run it back over the first two that we just did to make sure that we've got them ticked off. And there we go. So we're getting the kind of responses we want. I think the formatting could be improved, but in the real world, you'd be building this into some kind of workflow automation, and you could do an additional step after that's a formatter that preps it for, say, the Gmail or whatever email system that you're using to send, and it can make sure that it's actually formatted correctly. But in this case, we've just got the content correct and the classification correct. So now we can give this a nice thumbs up, and we can go to the next one and run it again. And the goal here is to be able to go through all of these examples, the input examples that I've put into the data set, and for it to be categorizing correctly and giving the right kinds of responses based on the examples and based on the guidelines that the customer or the client has given us. Yep, so this one's saying that they're going to be looking into it within 24 hours. That's all good. And we can go through to number 3 here. So I think it's pretty clear what the refinement process is from here and the evaluation refinement loop. You go back and forth until you're getting the kind of results that you're looking for. I want to give you a few more tips here, just so that you can play around, more levers that you can pull. And there are a few big ones here. And this actually really helps you to understand prompt engineering on a much deeper level, because say here, we have the switch where we can toggle things on and off. So entire sections can be toggled on and off. So we can do some interesting experiments like, okay, if I turn off the role section and then I run this again, is it going to come out much different to what it just did? So it looks like it's pretty much the same there. So it appears that the role is not actually adding much to it in this case, likely because we've got so much context elsewhere, but this is a fairly straightforward use case, and we are using quite a powerful model, which is something we can test in a second actually, is bringing that model quality down and seeing if we can get the same results with an even cheaper model. Or another good one that I like to do is turning off the examples and seeing if they're actually making a difference, because in a lot of cases, your examples are going to be a massive a wall of text, especially when you have large inputs. And you maybe have a whole YouTube video that you want to put in, and the transcript is the input, and therefore your example section is gigantic. But in this case, let's just turn off our examples and we'll give it a spin and see how this one comes out. Oh no, actually there is a bit of a difference. See, here we have the role and the task on, and it gave it this nicely formatted, exactly how we wanted it. And then if we go up, we have taken the role out, and one, we're getting the subject in there, so it seems to be a lot less accurate. It's not following the exact response format that we've asked for here, which is, it's obviously ignoring the fact that we said, look, you can't put in any other stuff that's going to reveal that this is an autoresponder. So this would be a fail. This one will be good. And here you can see we've added the role back in, but taken out the examples, and we're seeing similar issues again. So the role in this case actually appears to be doing quite a lot. It's paying a lot more attention to the instructions we give it, and also understanding that it's part of an autoresponder system, and therefore this stuff can't be included. It appears that the example section, where we have it here, but not in here, is not actually doing that much. So you can see how you can start to test and figure out what parts of the prompt are actually moving the needle, what parts are needed. That actually isn't a green thumb. So if we turn everything back on, I've shown you guys how you can create new versions of sections. Easiest way is to right click on one of these tabs and click duplicate, and it's going to give you a duplicate version of that, and you can make changes to it, chop some bits out. And the last test that I want to do here is to see if we can get the same performance. Let's just run through a couple of these. So there we go. 4, 5, and 6. So we'll just get these filled out using the best prompt that we know is performing how we want it to. And there we go. We have all of these responses. Let's just double check this last one, number 6. This is a technical support one, and it seems to be dealing with that correctly there. So that's good. This is performing as expected. Now, if we change this down to a cheaper version of Claude's models, so 3.5 Haiku, and we run this on 6 here, and then we compare them. Now, actually, this probably isn't a fair comparison because this part with this tech support kind of questions, it is coming up with its own AI generated responses to it. We don't actually have a knowledge base on tech support, which is what you do with more of an agent-based build. But if we go back to, let's just do 1, 2, and 3 again. So an easy way of doing this would be to just go to Haiku and we'll run 1. And then we'll switch to Sonnet 3.7 and we'll compare it side by side. And it appears that we are getting pretty much the same thing. And you can see the cost has gone from 83 cents here down to 24 cents. It's taken almost a second less to get this same kind of result. So Prometheus is great for giving you some helpful outputs like this. Obviously, this is 3 times cheaper than this one. And if we go back to 3.5 here and we test number 2, and then we go to 3.7 and we test number 2 again, you can see, okay, we are getting, pretty much the same response, exactly the same on both of them. There's also other things you can play with if you're doing more writing-based tasks, like come into the temperature and play around with the temperature. But I think I've given you a pretty good rundown of the entire process of how we build prompts. It's PDER Process. We write the plan out, use that plan, put it into the tool to rapidly generate the draft, fit all the pieces into Prometheus here, set up your data sets, and then rapidly go through and test all of them to make sure it's working. And that refinement cycle and the different levers you have to pull on, like turning sections off, creating new variations of certain sections, playing around with the model, the temperature, etc. Those are all your tools. And I want to just give you a final sort of keystone or cap to this entire project, which is how you can turn these prompts into usable tools that can actually be really helpful for you, either as an employee or business owner, is to actually go back to Relevance AI and to make handy internal tools for yourself or for other people in the company, or even for clients if you're an AI agency. On Relevance here, say if we wanted to turn this into a autoresponder tool, not a super great example, but you'd probably do this more for, say, like content generation, where you put in a couple of inputs and it gives you, through your prompt engineering work, it's going to be able to transform that into an ideal kind of content for whatever platform you're choosing. But in this case, we can then take all of these. This is, of course, taking in 2 inputs. So we could say input 1 is going to be email content. We can go a short text, and we can go days since purchase. Then we can go to an LLM step here. And what we can do is just start to build out our prompt again inside Relevance AI. And then we can just pop these in here and go email content and put in the email there. And if we go days since purchase, don't need to put this in, of course, because we're going to be passing that in within Relevance. And we can just dump the rest of the prompt in here now that we've finalized it and really worked it through. So the thing is that testing it within something like Relevance or any other kind of workflow builder would be a lot more difficult and take a whole lot more time. And you don't have anywhere near as much control. And it's just really an inferior way of testing and building the prompt. So we can then replicate the prompt that we chose here, which is going to be our Claude 3.5 Haiku. And if we save and publish, we now have our own email reply generator tool. So say if you want to make a tool like this, use your prompt engineering skills or get your staff or team to do this, and then you can go to use. How you could even go share. This is usually how I'd like to share them around the company. Copy this. And now you've got this cool standalone tool where anyone in the company can access this tool. And I can go back and do the exact same thing we did. And we put in our, where's my order? And we've got 4 days since purchase. And bam, that's how you can create your own handy dandy AI tools and use them sort of wherever you need within your business, within your personal life, and using that prompt engineering process. And there you go. We're getting the kind of outputs we want. And this can be used via API, all sorts of different things. But That's the prompt engineering process, first and foremost, that I wanted to teach you. And while that planning phase can feel a bit clunky at first, it's so good if you just rip through that and then you paste that into the AI tool to generate it. And before you know it, you've got a like 90% of the way there with a few tweaks needed, as you saw, but being able to extract more value out of these AI models and not having to pay for that trade-off of, okay, I don't have the time to spend to make a really good prompt. This is the whole system that we use at Morningside. So I hope that's been helpful for you guys. If you want to get all the resources and the perfect prompt generator tool, I'll even give you access to our perfect prompt generator tool for AI agents, which is a bit more complex, but I know a lot of you guys are building agents now, and we have a really, really good tool for doing that as well. So that's all going to be linked in the first link in the description will be to my Skool. You go to YouTube resources on Skool once you're inside, and you'll find this video, and all of the resources will be on there. Also, my entire free course as well for building AI businesses, building AI systems, building agents, and everything is in there as well. So that's all for the video, guys. If you want to check out my recent video, which is massive breakdown of how to build AI agents, like probably the best resource on the entire internet right now about how to learn AI agent building. If you're a non-technical person, or even if you are a technical person, that's up there. But that's all for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.